In Georgia, our Department of Economic Development is encouraging small to medium-sized companies to look for new markets. And generally, the place they say you should get your feet wet in Canada. How do you foresee that in the future? Do you see more small to medium-sized companies doing cross-border deals all the time? Historically, the big companies, of course, have been so enmeshed in each other's economies, but the smaller ones, not necessarily.
I think the smaller ones are going to be increasing their market share because more often than not, the smaller companies are providers of that business input. And Canada being as close as we are geographically, and because we do business pretty much the same way, we speak in a large part the same language, same business values and so on, it's an easy market to get started in. We found that our companies just crossing the border and selling into the northern states and then reaching down further is also a very big help in getting them started. And I used to say to, when we were doing the free trade agreement with the United States before the NAFTA, some of our small businesses were saying, geez, I don't know that I'm too keen on this new trade agreement. I said, well, you know, you've got some friends in Buffalo who are doing the same sort of thing as you are. I said, oh yeah. I said, are they better than you? No, certainly not. They're not better. I can beat them. I said, well, why can't you trade into the United States then? Because the people in Buffalo are the same as the people in Detroit or in New York or in Philadelphia. When it's just a little bit further away, it's something people can get their mind around that. And that's why I think it's a good idea for your Trade Department to push the small and medium-sized companies to do this. We have become really quite integrated as a result of the U.S., Canada, and then the NAFTA trade agreements. And it has been very helpful for both of us that we have that integration.
At the same time, there's been the thickening of the border.
Yes.
Do you think that impedes the small and medium-sized company interest in crossing borders?
It does, because if you're a big company, you have a much greater internal capacity to move things back and forth across the border. So that is a challenge. But this is where the government can help. Certainly we here in the embassy in Washington, but here in the Consulate General in Atlanta can be a help in trying to facilitate the entry of some of your companies into the Canadian market.
What do you think are Canada's greatest strengths in terms of encouraging cooperation between companies and also universities?
I think in both cases, going back to what I said a minute ago, we live in the same geographic area, and we speak the same language. We think about things a lot in the same sort of way. I think that's a huge benefit for Canada to have someone on their border who thinks so much the same way. Just cast your eyes south. Mexico has had a more difficult time because although the Hispanic population is growing in the United States, in the past, when it was smaller, it was more difficult. They did things differently, they talked a different language and looked at things somewhat differently. We've had that benefit of being much more similar in the way we approach things.
You have been a supporter of bilateral relations. Instead of trying to have a free trade area of the Americas and so forth, you've encouraged the development of bilateral treaties. Do you think that the United States is going to move ahead with its bilateral treaties? We have Panama, we have Korea, we have Colombia that are just sitting there. Do you think we'll ever get done with those?
Well, you're getting into now domestic American politics on some of those treaties that still have to be confirmed by the Senate. We both have done regional free trade agreements where I think we're both in Chile, we both concluded one in Colombia, but still have to confirm it. With the global treaty, the Doha global trade negotiations being effectively stalled, we had a positive statement out of Pittsburgh at the G20 meeting, but when you get behind and talk to people, it's going to be tough to move that, put that over the top. So if you can't do that, what's the best way of improving our trade opportunities? These regional bilateral agreements. And we have one that we're just beginning discussions with Europe on. And I would hope that as a result of that, if we were able to conclude something, that might break some new ground that might be helpful for the United States to have a similar type of agreement. It's called an economic cooperation agreement. It's broader than trade. Mm-hmm. But if the three of us, Canada, the United States, and the Europeans could have both have trade agreements between us, or these economic cooperation agreements, that might be a real boost for the Doha round, the global round of negotiations.
What's it like looking at the American healthcare debate from the seat of Ambassador of Canada?
It looks like a very difficult debate. I was talking to someone the other day, and I think he put it quite appropriately. He said, it's like putting mercury in the bottom of a glass and holding it still. The difficulty of the leadership, either in the administration or in Congress, to hold a consensus still and make sure that consensus is broad enough to get final legislation is extraordinarily difficult. They change one thing to appeal to the moderates, and they lose the people on one side or other of the debate. It's just a very difficult consensus to try to achieve.
Have you been called in at all by the Congress to voice how Canada does it?
No, and I don't think that's really appropriate. This is it's very much of a domestic issue for you. There are different countries. Canada has one form of health system, the UK, the French, we each have somewhat different systems. You have to create the system that works for you.
Do you feel Canada's works for Canadians? Yeah,
Canada's system, I think by and large people would be quite positive. There have been polls done recently, and they're up in the 80%. People are quite supportive of the Canadian system. The costs are different, and I think that is one of the reasons why people are supportive, but it seems to work.